The early morning fog clung to the edges of the Virginia Naval Base, curling around the cold metal of the training rifles and the concrete of the firing range. Trainees were scattered across the field, their boots crunching against gravel, the faint scent of gunpowder already in the air. Among them, Lieutenant Alina Ward stood silently, adjusting the scope of her rifle with meticulous care. Her movements were precise, almost ritualistic, each adjustment deliberate. She wasn't loud, she didn't boast, and she certainly didn't seek attention. To the untrained eye, she could have been anyone, a quiet transfer, an invisible cog in the machine. Across the range, Corporal Ridge Dawson leaned against the railing of the observation deck, a smug grin plastered across his rugged face. He had a reputation, brash, confident, always willing to test others' nerves, especially the quieter ones. His eyes fell on Alina. "Look at her," he said loudly, voice carrying across the field. "Probably can't even hit the broad side of a barn." The words dripped with derision. Laughter erupted from the group of trainees clustered nearby. The kind of laughter that stung because it wasn't malicious enough to be funny, just enough to embarrass. Alina didn't react. Her jaw was tight, her hands steady. Her breathing was even, her posture unshakable. Inside, a spark of irritation flickered, not at the mockery itself, but at the arrogance of a man who thought confidence alone could measure skill. Ridge was loud, overbearing, and a nuisance. But beneath that, he was reckless, careless, a man who underestimated anyone quieter than himself. And in underestimating Alina, he was about to make the first of many mistakes. He pushed further, striding forward with exaggerated bravado. "Come on, Ward," he called, mocking her with each syllable. "Let's see if you can even hit that target at 200 yards. He jerked his hand toward a distant bullseye, the metal target gleaming faintly in the morning sun. "Bet you can't. Bet you'll whiff it completely. Maybe you should stick to water guns." Some trainees snickered nervously, unsure whether to intervene or stay silent. Others whispered to one another, eyes darting toward Alina to watch her reaction. Ridge's confidence was palpable, his smirk infuriating, but Alina remained composed. She didn't answer, didn't flinch, didn't give him the satisfaction of a response. Instead, she crouched into position, laid the rifle across her shoulder, and aligned her eye with the scope. Every detail mattered. The angle of her wrist, the placement of her cheek, the steadiness of her breathing. No one watching could imagine the life behind those calm eyes. Alina Ward wasn't just a trainee, she was a legend in shadows, a whisper of history few knew existed. A Tier 1 SEAL sniper, she had served overseas in missions so classified her own presence was a secret. 300 confirmed saves, lives rescued from ambushes, hostages freed from certain death, convoys saved from hidden explosives, all executed with a precision that seemed impossible. Yet none of that mattered here. Today, she was just a trainee, silently enduring the arrogance of a man too confident in his own abilities. Ridge, oblivious, leaned against the railing, folding his arms. "Well," he barked, "are you going to hit it, or are we all wasting our morning watching you pretend?" He laughed, loud and obnoxious, and some trainees laughed along, trying to fit in. Alina didn't react outwardly. She exhaled slowly, letting the calm settle over her like a shield. Her finger hovered over the trigger, not in haste but in anticipation. Timing was everything. Every SEAL knows that. Every sniper knows that. It isn't the first move that matters, it's the right move, made at exactly the right moment. She sighted the target, adjusting for distance, wind, and subtle shifts in the morning air. She knew Ridge would underestimate her. She knew he expected failure, expected embarrassment. And she was more than willing to allow him that illusion just for a moment longer. She closed her eyes briefly, visualizing the shot, the trajectory, the small impact it would make. A calm smile touched her lips. This was not about proving herself to him. It was about revealing the truth quietly, with precision, in a way he couldn't ignore. Ridge waved his hands impatiently, unaware of the storm he had provoked. "Come on, Ward, don't tell me you're scared," he shouted, "afraid to prove you're not a joke." A faint ripple of tension passed through the onlookers. Some glanced at Alina, noticing the tight set of her jaw, the unyielding focus in her eyes. For a moment, the world seemed to hold its breath, and then she moved. The rifle recoiled slightly in her hands as she fired. A soft ping rang out, crisp, perfect, resonating across the range. Heads turned. The distant target shivered from the impact, dead center. Ridge's jaw dropped, his smirk vanished. His confident stance faltered as a low murmur of surprise spread across the trainees. Alina didn't look at him. She simply stood, raised her rifle to her shoulder again, and prepared for the next round. Calm, collected, unshakable. Ridge opened his mouth to speak, but no words came. His mockery had been dismantled in a single shot, delivered not with arrogance but with skill, patience, and the quiet authority of someone who had spent years perfecting what others took for granted. The trainees exchanged glances, whispering to one another, their curiosity piqued. Who was this woman who could strike with such precision, so effortlessly? Alina lowered the rifle and stepped back, her gaze moving to the horizon as if nothing had happened. To anyone else it looked like restraint. To Ridge it looked like defiance. But in reality it was simply discipline, the kind that comes from saving lives in situations where a single mistake could mean death. She had lived in shadows long enough to know that showing off was unnecessary. Impact spoke louder than words. Ridge, meanwhile, felt a pang of unease he couldn't name. He had mocked her without knowing her, and in doing so, he had underestimated the consequences. He had set the stage for a truth he couldn't yet comprehend. Alina gathered her equipment and moved to the side, letting the rest of the trainees prepare for their drills. The morning sun climbed higher, illuminating the range, the rifles, the distant targets. And as the sound of gunfire echoed across the field, one thing was certain. Ridge Dawson had just encountered something he could not dismiss, a force of precision and discipline that would quietly, inevitably, leave its mark on everyone at the base. The mockery had ended. The real story, her story, had only just begun. Alina Ward moved with quiet purpose through the base, her boots barely making a sound on the gravel paths. To anyone watching, she was simply a trainee, another face in a crowd of new transfers, another name in the logbook. But beneath the calm exterior lay a history few could comprehend. Her life had been measured not in accolades or applause, but in seconds, in heartbeats, in lives saved. She had been a Tier 1 SEAL sniper, the kind of operator whose work remained classified long after the world had moved on. The truth of her past was sealed in folders marked top secret, her missions known only to a handful of commanders and intelligence officers. Yet each mission carried the weight of hundreds of lives, convoys saved from ambushes, hostages rescued under impossible conditions, strategic eliminations that prevented death without anyone ever realizing it had happened. 300 confirmed saves were her record, not kills, saves. Each shot a decision that required precision, patience, and nerves of steel. And each time she bore the memory quietly, without ceremony, without self-aggrandizement. Overseas, Alina had operated in some of the most dangerous theaters in the world, desert towns riddled with insurgent snipers, urban centers trapped in the chaos of conflict, jungles where ambushes could come from anywhere. She had learned to measure wind and distance instinctively, to read subtle changes in light and shadow, to predict the movement of threats before they even appeared. Every second mattered. Every choice could mean life or death, not just for herself, but for the people she was sworn to protect. Her record had been extraordinary, yet her career had ended quietly. One mission, meant to extract a convoy trapped in hostile territory, had pushed her to her limits. Hidden snipers, improvised explosives, civilians caught in crossfire. It was a scenario designed to break the strongest soldiers. But Alina had not only succeeded, she had saved every life. The shot that saved the convoy was over 1,700 yards, a distance considered impossible by most standards. Yet it hit exactly where it needed to, neutralizing the trigger man and allowing the convoy to escape. Commanders praised her skill, but she requested anonymity, refusing public recognition. Some of her teammates would later say they had never seen someone so precise, so calm, so unflinching under pressure. Now back in the United States, Alina had traded combat zones for classrooms and training ranges. The base in Virginia was her new arena, a place where she could teach, observe, and quietly contribute. Her transfers had been processed under strict confidentiality. Only a few senior officers knew her true history. To everyone else, she was just another trainee, another face in a sea of military personnel. Ridge Dawson, however, did not know this, and his ignorance would cost him credibility. As she walked toward the armory to prepare for the day's drills, her mind wandered briefly to her past missions. She recalled the missions where she had been the unseen hand, the quiet guardian. She remembered the moments when her finger squeezed the trigger, and the world paused for a single heartbeat before a life was spared. She remembered the fear, the weight of responsibility, and the satisfaction of knowing that someone had survived because of her skill. These were not memories she shared. They were experiences that shaped her discipline and her quiet confidence. The other trainees often misinterpreted her silence. Some thought it arrogance. Others thought she was timid, unsure. But Alina had learned long ago that perception was irrelevant. Her work, her skill, her decisions, those were what mattered. Words were unnecessary. Proof came from results, and results were inevitable. Ridge continued to dominate the range with his loud antics, unaware of the storm he had provoked. His arrogance radiated across the field, his jokes, jeers, and challenges intended to unsettle her. But Alina had learned to expect the unexpected. Every threat, every distraction, every insult was a test of focus, patience, and precision. In her world, such provocations were trivial, minor ripples on the surface of a vast ocean of experience. She observed, calculated, waited. She remembered one particular overseas operation, months ago, where she had saved a young child trapped in a hostile city during a firefight. The building was unstable, the enemies closing in, and every second counted. She had to take a shot that required not just accuracy, but timing, intuition, and nerve. Her rifle sang once, and the enemy was neutralized. The child survived. No one applauded. No one even knew the details. But that memory stayed with her, a quiet reminder of why she had honed her craft to perfection. At the base, the small victories mattered less, but the principle was the same. Precision, discipline, and patience always won in the end. Ridge's taunts, the laughter of the trainees, the mockery, all of it was background noise. He thought he was testing her, but in reality, he was underestimating her. He had no idea that he was facing someone who had been forged in some of the most intense battlefields in the world. By mid-morning, Alina was ready for her next drill. The targets were laid out and the trainees prepared their rifles. Ridge swaggered in, confident as ever, smirking at her. He made a show of checking the distance, adjusting the scope, and loudly declaring the difficulty of the shot. "This one's impossible," he announced theatrically. "Good luck, Ward," the other trainees chuckled. Some glanced at Alina, waiting for her reaction. She didn't respond. She simply knelt, set her rifle, and took a deep breath. Her calm demeanor drew attention. Instructors began to notice the precision in her movements, the quiet control in her posture. There was something different about her. The way she aligned the rifle, adjusted her scope, and calculated her stance suggested experience far beyond that of a typical trainee. Whispers began to circulate. Who was she? Where had she trained? How could she move with such absolute confidence while others fumbled? Ridge, oblivious to the history behind her skill, continued his verbal assault. He mocked, joked, and attempted to provoke her into making a mistake. But Alina remained focused. Every insult, every attempt to destabilize her, only reinforced her calm. She was prepared for much worse. She had faced life-and-death situations where mistakes were fatal. This man's arrogance, loud and disruptive as it was, barely registered on her radar. Then she lifted her rifle, adjusted for wind, distance, and her own steadiness, and squeezed the trigger. The shot rang out, crisp and exact. The target quivered, struck precisely in the center. Heads turned. Mouths fell open. Silence rippled across the training field. Ridge's confident smirk vanished. The whispers of awe began among the trainees. Alina didn't smile. She didn't look around. She simply stood, lowered her rifle, and exuded a quiet authority that demanded attention without words. In that single moment, the legend of Alina Ward began to pierce the veil of anonymity she had maintained. The trainees sensed it instinctively. The instructors exchanged knowing glances, and Ridge's overconfidence was shattered. He had mocked someone he did not understand, underestimated someone whose skill had saved lives in ways he could scarcely imagine. And Alina, standing quietly amidst the fog and gunfire, simply prepared for the next challenge, confident, calm, and ready. The day had begun like any other, but for those watching, nothing would ever be the same. Ridge had provoked a quiet storm, and Alina Ward, the hidden legend, had arrived. The sun was climbing higher now, burning through the morning haze over the Virginia Naval Base. The metallic scent of gunpowder hung in the air, mixed with the faint aroma of damp earth from the previous night's rain. Alina Ward moved through the range like a shadow, her rifle cradled loosely in her arms, her focus absolute. Her eyes flicked over each target, analyzing angles, wind shifts, and distance. Nothing escaped her notice. She had learned to see patterns where others saw chaos, to anticipate danger before it arrived, and to act with deadly precision when the moment demanded it. Across the range, Corporal Ridge Dawson was restless. His ego had been bruised, his confidence cracked by Alina's earlier flawless shot. He couldn't let it go. Every laugh he had previously drawn from the trainees now seemed hollow. Pride burned inside him like a wildfire, demanding recognition, demanding superiority. Ridge didn't understand discipline, patience, or quiet skill. His arrogance had always carried him this far, and he expected it to continue. But Alina Ward didn't respond to mockery, and that fact alone ignited his obsession. He strode across the range, boots clanging against gravel, and stopped a few meters from where Alina adjusted her rifle for the next drill. "Well, Ward," he said loudly, smirking with that irritating mixture of condescension and overconfidence, "you got lucky that first time. Let's see if you can do it again." He gestured toward a moving target at 300 yards. "This one's not just sitting still for you. You'll miss, guaranteed." He laughed, and a few trainees chuckled nervously, unsure whether to take sides. Alina didn't respond. She didn't flinch. Her finger rested lightly on the trigger, her posture steady. Ridge's voice, meant to provoke, barely registered. In his arrogance, he failed to notice her subtle adjustments, the way she absorbed the wind and measured the slight tremor in the air, the tiny details that most shooters overlooked. Each step she took was deliberate, each breath calculated. In her mind, the challenge was already half won. Ridge, growing impatient, took a more aggressive step. He fired his rifle into the air with a sharp crack, the sound echoing across the range. "Come on, are you frozen or scared?" he shouted, his smirk widening as the trainees turned to watch. Some were shifting nervously, sensing the tension building. Alina's calm eyes followed his movements, noting each misstep, each gesture, each tell of overconfidence. To the untrained observer, she appeared serene. To anyone who had studied precision and patience, she was already planning her response. She knelt, adjusting her stance for stability. The moving target swayed gently in the breeze, a test that Ridge expected would reveal her true limits. He smirked, certain of her failure. "Take your shot," he called. "I'm ready to laugh." His confidence radiated like a shield, but it was fragile, resting entirely on his ignorance of her capabilities. Alina exhaled slowly, steadying her heartbeat. Years of experience taught her that focus was not a mental exercise, it was a way of life. Every mission she had ever undertaken, every life she had saved, demanded perfect control. Today's target was nothing compared to that. The wind shifted slightly, brushing across the range. She accounted for it, minute corrections in her grip, her scope, her breathing. Ridge's antics became background noise, irrelevant, meaningless. Another shot rang out from Ridge, this time closer to her position. It cracked the air with an almost intentional malice. He was trying to distract her, to force her into a mistake. But Alina's mind was unshakable. She had operated under circumstances far more lethal, where a single misjudgment meant death. Ridge's clumsy attempt to unsettle her barely registered. She inhaled, exhaled, and squeezed the trigger once, twice, each shot precise, her eyes locked on the target. The first bullet struck the moving target cleanly, slightly off-center. The second hit dead center, splitting the bullseye with perfect timing. A collective gasp rose from the trainees who had been watching in suspense. Ridge froze, his smirk replaced with disbelief. His attempts at provocation had failed spectacularly, and he couldn't understand why. How had she done it? Why did her presence command such precision? Alina didn't allow herself a moment of satisfaction. She lowered her rifle, standing tall, calm as ever. Her eyes scanned the range, nodding the other trainees, the instructors, the subtle shifts in attention. Rumors would begin to circulate, they already were, but she didn't care. To her, it wasn't about fame, recognition, or pride. It was about discipline, control, and doing the job correctly. The respect she earned would come naturally, silently, through the results she consistently produced. Ridge, however, couldn't let it go. He followed her to the water station during the break, attempting to corner her with another round of jeers. "You're lucky, Ward," he said. "I've never seen anyone hit moving targets like that. Maybe you're hiding some trick. Or maybe—" He stopped, uncertain of the words. He didn't know whether to accuse her of cheating or admit he was genuinely impressed. Alina turned toward him, eyes calm but firm. "It's skill, not luck," she said quietly. Her voice carried authority without aggression. Ridge stared, caught between pride and disbelief. No one at the base had ever addressed him like that. He was used to fear, to subservience, to laughter at others' expense. But Alina Ward, quiet and unassuming, had stopped him cold. The instructors observed from a distance, exchanging subtle glances. Something was happening that none of them had seen before. Ridge, for all his bravado, had underestimated her completely. Alina's calm control, her measured reactions, and her unmatched precision marked her as extraordinary. Some whispered among themselves, recognizing the stance, the breathing, the subtle adjustments in her shooting style. It was reminiscent of Tier 1 SEALs they had trained with years ago, operators whose work remained secret, whose legends were spoken of only in hushed tones. Ridge's frustration boiled beneath the surface. His ego demanded dominance, and this quiet woman had shattered it without even raising her voice. He had mocked her openly, expecting laughter, expecting control. Instead, he had met patience, skill, and experience, and that combination was far more intimidating than anything he had anticipated. As the afternoon drills continued, Ridge escalated his provocations, attempting to distract her with loud commentary, unsteady firing, and threats of public humiliation. Each attempt failed spectacularly. Alina's composure remained absolute. Every shot she fired was clean, precise, and purposeful. Her movements were measured, her breathing steady, her focus unwavering. Ridge's attempts at control became increasingly desperate, but she was already several moves ahead, anticipating his actions before he could execute them. By the end of the day, the whispers among the trainees had grown louder. "Who is she?" they asked. "She's too calm, too precise. She's not like anyone we've trained with." The instructors nodded subtly, their eyes reflecting recognition and quiet respect. Ridge, meanwhile, was fuming, humiliated by his inability to provoke her, his ego bruised by her skill. He didn't yet understand that he had provoked a quiet storm, one that was only beginning to reveal itself. Alina, gathering her rifle and equipment, walked past Ridge without a word. Her calm presence spoke louder than any taunt, any boast, any arrogance he had displayed that day. He had underestimated her, and he would continue to do so until he learned her history, her discipline, and the lives she had saved in ways no one else could imagine. The sun dipped lower over the base, casting long shadows across the range. Ridge left the field that day more aware of his own inadequacies than he cared to admit. Alina Ward had remained silent, composed, and deadly precise, a living testament to what focus, skill, and experience could achieve. And though no one outside a handful of senior officers knew her true past, everyone on that range had begun to sense that this quiet woman was far more than she appeared. The game had changed. Ridge's provocations, meant to embarrass her, had only revealed the depth of her skill. And Alina, she was only beginning to let the world see what she was capable of, The base was buzzing with anticipation as word spread quickly. Ridge Dawson had issued a challenge. The target was set at an impossible distance, 1,000 yards. Trainees and instructors alike gathered at the perimeter of the firing range, some curious, others skeptical, but all sensing the tension building like a storm cloud ready to break. Ridge, ever the showman, stood front and center, smirking and gesturing toward the distant target, as if he owned the entire field. "Let's see if the quiet little ward can do something real for once," he sneered. "Or is this where she fails spectacularly?" Alina Ward, standing a few meters away, remained composed. Her gaze swept over the assembled group, absorbing every detail. The wind shifting subtly across the range, the angle of sunlight glinting off metal, the slight tremors in the distant target's stand. To the untrained eye she appeared calm, almost detached, but beneath that exterior her mind was calculating wind velocity, distance, trajectory, gravity, even humidity. Every factor mattered. Ridge had no idea that his public challenge was exactly the environment she thrived in. Ridge picked up a rifle and inspected it, though he barely understood the mechanics. "This should be easy," he muttered, loud enough for everyone to hear. "All she has to do is miss just once and I win." He adjusted the scope slightly, cleaned the barrel quickly, and strutted back to his position, confident. His eyes darted to Alina. "Your turn," he said with a mocking grin. "Don't disappoint us." The crowd watched Alina approach the firing line. She carried her rifle with fluid ease, each step deliberate, precise. No one dared speak. The silence was a contrast to Ridge's earlier boisterous energy. She set the rifle down, lying prone with perfect posture, and began her methodical inspection. Ridge had handed her a weapon intentionally flawed, a dirty barrel, a slightly misaligned scope, and a trigger with uneven tension. Many would have been thrown off immediately. Alina simply wiped the barrel with the edge of her sleeve, adjusted the scope using small, precise movements, and prepared herself mentally for the shot. Every trainee, every instructor, even Ridge, sensed something unusual. Her movements were deliberate, almost ritualistic, yet imbued with confidence. She inhaled, exhaled, and let her mind enter a zone familiar to only those who had operated under extreme pressure. A space where time seemed to stretch, where every calculation was instinctive, and the world beyond the rifle's sights faded into irrelevance. Ridge, unaware of the depth of her skill, whispered to a trainee beside him, "She can't do it. Nobody hits that far with that rifle in those conditions." He didn't realize that this quiet woman had executed far more dangerous shots in far worse conditions, saving lives that the public would never know about. The world outside the base had never seen the truth of her capabilities. The 1,700-yard convoy rescue, the hostage extractions under sniper fire, the impossible, life-saving long-distance shots. And now, at 1,000 yards, all that training, all that experience would speak for itself. Alina exhaled again, letting her body relax, letting the rifle become an extension of herself. She focused on the target, calculating the subtle sway caused by the morning breeze. Ridge muttered impatiently, tapping his foot, trying to provoke her into rushing the shot. But she did not rush. Precision demanded patience. Focus required calm. Every lesson learned overseas, every mission that had required perfect judgment, culminated in this singular moment. She adjusted her cheek, her finger hovered lightly on the trigger, and she fired once. The shot echoed across the field, a crisp, clean sound. The target shivered slightly. The bullet had struck slightly off-center. Ridge's smirk faltered. He frowned, muttering under his breath, "Beginner's luck." But Alina didn't flinch. She adjusted her aim with the smallest of corrections, recalibrating for wind shift and barrel alignment, her breathing perfectly timed. She fired a second time. Dead center. Bold. The crowd erupted in astonishment. The target shivered under the impact, the shot almost impossible under the conditions. Trainees whispered in disbelief. Instructors exchanged glances, recognition in their eyes. Even Ridge, for all his confidence, froze. His mind could not reconcile what he had just seen. A quiet, unassuming trainee had just struck a target at 1,000 yards with flawless precision. using a weapon he had thought was sabotaged to ensure her failure. Alina didn't celebrate. She simply lowered the rifle, her expression calm and unreadable. Her actions spoke louder than any words could: mastery, control, and focus. Ridge's bravado evaporated, replaced by something he didn't understand: fear, admiration, and humiliation all rolled into one. He had believed himself superior, untouchable, and yet here she stood, proving that experience and discipline outweighed arrogance and noise. Some trainees began to murmur among themselves, curiosity and awe replacing the previous laughter. "Who is she?" one whispered. "I've never seen anyone do that." Another added, "She's unreal. That's impossible." Instructors quietly nodded, recognizing the subtle posture, the breathing patterns, and the small adjustments that only an expert would execute. Ridge's mocking had done nothing but expose his own ignorance. Ridge, humiliated and desperate to reclaim some sense of authority, stepped forward. Okay, he stammered, his voice wavering for the first time that day. "That was luck or something. Maybe you just got lucky." He laughed nervously, but no one else joined in. His words rang hollow even to him. He had underestimated Alina Ward completely, and the truth was undeniable. Alina didn't respond. Her calm composure remained absolute. She packed up her rifle, collected her gear, and walked past Ridge without a word. Every step exuded quiet authority, a silent declaration that skill, not arrogance, ruled this field. The trainees followed her movements with wide eyes, and even some of the senior officers couldn't help but exchange knowing glances. The sun continued its climb, casting long shadows across the range. Ridge stood frozen, processing what he had witnessed. He had attempted to provoke her, to embarrass her, to assert dominance, and he had failed spectacularly. For the first time, he realized that Alina Ward was not just another trainee. She was a force, shaped by countless life-and-death scenarios, whose experience and skill dwarfed anything he had ever seen. Alina paused briefly at the edge of the range, glanced back at the distant target, and allowed herself a subtle smile, not of triumph but of quiet satisfaction. The challenge had been issued, the shot had been taken, and the world, at least the small world of the base that day, had begun to understand that this quiet woman was far more than she appeared. Ridge's arrogance had set the stage for revelation, and she had delivered without boast, without spectacle, only with precision and calm. As the crowd dispersed and the range returned to its usual drills, the whispers persisted. "She's unreal," someone muttered. "There's no way she's just a trainee." "What's her story?" another asked. Ridge muttered under his breath, his pride wounded. "I need to figure out who she really is," but deep down he already knew. He had underestimated a legend, someone whose past would soon demand recognition, whether he was ready or not. The day ended with Alina walking away from the range, her calm demeanor untouched by the spectacle, her mind already preparing for the next drill. Ridge followed, a mix of envy, curiosity, and begrudging respect building inside him. He had thought he controlled the field with his arrogance, but Alina Ward had quietly upended that illusion. And in that moment, everyone watching realized something undeniable. Ridge Dawson had just been introduced to a true legend, a woman whose history, skill, and discipline had quietly saved hundreds of lives. And now, her presence on the base was impossible to ignore. The 1,000-yard test was over, but the story of Alina Ward had only just begun. The base had never been so silent after a drill. Trainees and instructors alike were moving through the grounds, whispering in hushed tones, glancing toward the range and glancing toward her. Alina Ward, as always, moved with calm efficiency, her rifle slung over her shoulder. She didn't respond to the murmurs or the stares. She never had. Silence and observation were her tools, and she had no interest in drawing attention to herself. Yet attention had already found her, as subtle as the wind that rustled the leaves along the base's perimeter. Ridge Dawson, humiliated, was the first to break the stunned quiet. His face was pale, his jaw tight. Every attempt at bravado had failed. Every insult and challenge had only highlighted his inadequacy. He muttered to himself as he walked, unable to understand how one quiet woman had dominated the range with such precision. The other trainees watched him, sensing the shift in energy, the unspoken realization that Ridge had underestimated someone far beyond his comprehension. The whispers spread like wildfire. "Did you see that?" one trainee asked. "She hit the 1,000-yard target perfectly. With that rifle, how is that even possible?" Another trainee added. "She didn't even flinch when Ridge was trying to distract her. She was calm, deadly calm." Instructors, observing from a distance, exchanged knowing glances. Some recognized the stance, the way she calculated her shots, the subtle adjustments of her body and breathing. Those who had served overseas in Tier 1 units recognized a method perfected through experience, precision under pressure, the quiet confidence of a true operator. Ridge, meanwhile, paced near the edge of the field trying to process the events. His mind, used to control and dominance, struggled with this new reality. He had mocked her, belittled her, assumed she was incapable, and yet every single assumption had been proven false. His humiliation was complete, and he didn't yet know how to respond. For the first time, arrogance had failed him, leaving only awe and an unfamiliar discomfort. In the officers' briefing room, murmurs of Alina's skill reached senior instructors. One senior chief quietly reviewed the day's footage, noting the elegance of her posture, the subtle recalibration she made after each shot, and the absolute calm under pressure. "I've only seen that kind of precision with Tier 1 operators," he muttered to another officer. "She's got the breathing patterns, the discipline. That's not just skill. That's experience that's hard-earned and rarely seen at this level." Their voices were low, careful not to reveal too much to Ridge or the trainees. Word traveled fast. By mid-afternoon, whispers had become a quiet hum across the base. Trainees speculated about her background, about where she had trained, about the missions she might have undertaken. Yet she remained indifferent, walking through the grounds with the same composed demeanor, moving to the armory, checking equipment, and preparing for the next drill as though nothing had happened. Her silence only fueled curiosity, making her legend grow in the minds of those around her. Ridge, however, became obsessed. He followed her through the mess hall, the gym, and even the running track, muttering questions under his breath. Who trained her? Where did she come from? There's no way she's just a regular trainee. He tried to mask his frustration with a casual gait, but his eyes betrayed him. Every trainee he passed sensed his growing obsession, the dangerous mixture of humiliation and fascination that had taken root. One of the instructors, noticing Ridge's behavior, decided to intervene subtly. "Pay attention, Dawson," the instructor said quietly. "It's not about ego. Sometimes skill is earned in silence, not noise. Watch, learn, and maybe you'll understand." Ridge bristled but nodded reluctantly, though inwardly he was still processing his own failure. Meanwhile, Alina's history began to surface in whispers among the higher-ranking officers. Though her missions were classified, a few details had been acknowledged internally. A convoy rescued from certain death at 1,700 yards. Hostages extracted from hostile territory without a single casualty. Strategic shots executed perfectly under impossible conditions. She had been a ghost, a silent guardian, saving hundreds of lives without recognition, without glory. Now, for the first time, fragments of that legend were seeping into the collective consciousness of the base. The trainees, meanwhile, tried to discuss what they had witnessed without revealing their awe to Ridge. "Did you see her adjust for the wind?" one asked. "No one even moves like that without serious experience." Another whispered, "I've seen SEAL instructors overseas, and her breathing pattern, her posture, that's professional. That's not something a regular trainee can fake." Their voices carried excitement, fear, and curiosity. She had shattered assumptions, rewritten expectations, and commanded attention without ever raising her voice. Ridge tried to talk to her directly, attempting to assert dominance. "Hey Ward," he called, leaning against a railing, "you're good, I'll give you that, but what's your story? Who taught you?" Alina looked at him calmly, her eyes steady. "Skill comes from experience," she said quietly, her tone even and unflinching. "It's earned, not taught." Ridge's confusion deepened. Her words were simple, but they carried weight he could not measure. She wasn't boasting. She wasn't provoking. She was stating the truth, a truth he was only beginning to understand. Later that day, the base commander requested a private briefing with Alina. Ridge, unaware of the meeting, was left packing nervously outside the room, trying to understand how one quiet trainee had so completely overturned his confidence. Inside the office, Alina stood at attention, composed as ever. The commander's voice was low, measured. "Lieutenant Ward, your performance today has been noted. You're operating at a level most operators never reach. Some of the instructors even recognize your stance and precision. Are you aware of the attention you've drawn?" Alina simply nodded. "Yes, sir, I am aware. I did what was necessary to complete the drill successfully." Her modesty contrasted sharply with the legend that was quietly forming around her. She didn't seek recognition. She didn't need applause. Her actions spoke louder than any words could. Outside, Ridge finally began to understand. He had mocked someone whose experience dwarfed his own. He had been publicly humiliated, not because of luck or circumstance, but because he had underestimated a true professional. His arrogance had been his downfall, and Alina's calm precision had exposed it entirely. He felt the sting of realization and an unexpected seed of respect. By evening, the base was alive with whispers. Trainees speculated, instructors nodded knowingly, and Ridge walked alone, processing the events of the day. Alina, as always, moved quietly, preparing for the next set of drills, her presence commanding attention without ever seeking it. The legend of her past, coupled with her undeniable skill, had begun to ripple outward, reaching ears and eyes that might one day fully understand her accomplishments. For Ridge, the lesson was clear but difficult to accept. Arrogance could never overcome experience, and silence often concealed the greatest power. For the base, it was a revelation. Alina Ward was no ordinary trainee. She was a living legend, disciplined, precise, and deadly in a way that demanded respect. And though she spoke little, every action she took was a testament to a career spent saving lives, hunting skill, and operating in shadows where others could not survive. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long, golden shadows across the range, Ridge Dawson watched Alina from a distance. She walked past him, quiet, composed, and entirely untouchable. For the first time, he realized the truth. He was in the presence of someone extraordinary, someone who had faced death, chaos, and impossible odds and emerged unshaken, someone who would not just survive but teach others the value of discipline, precision, and quiet mastery. The whispers of awe continued to ripple across the base, growing louder with every retelling of the 1,000-yard test. Trainees replayed the events in their minds, instructors nodded subtly, and Ridge could no longer ignore the truth. Alina Ward was more than a trainee. She was a silent force, a hidden legend, and the base would never see the world the same way again. And in that quiet, unassuming presence, a storm of respect, curiosity, and admiration was already forming, one that would challenge Ridge, transform the base, and reveal the true depth of Alina Ward's extraordinary past. The next morning, the base was unusually quiet. Trainees arrived for drills, but the air was thick with anticipation. Everyone had heard the whispers about Alina Ward, her flawless marksmanship, her calm precision, and the 1,000-yard shot that had left Ridge Dawson speechless. Yet most had only speculation. No one truly understood who she was or the depth of her experience. That was about to change. The base commander called a special assembly. Ridge, still nursing his bruised ego, shuffled to the front with the rest of the trainees. Curiosity and excitement buzzed through the room as murmurs spread. What was this about? Why had the commander requested everyone's presence? Some trainees whispered, "Maybe it's an award or a commendation." Others speculated nervously, "Or maybe she's about to be exposed as a cheat." Alina arrived quietly, as always, her presence commanding attention without effort. She walked through the rows of personnel with measured steps, her uniform flawless, her eyes scanning the room. Ridge's gaze followed her, a mix of apprehension and curiosity in his expression. He didn't yet know that the story about to be revealed would change everything he thought he knew. The commander cleared his throat, his expression serious but tinged with respect. "Attention all personnel," he began. "Today, you have witnessed skill that is extraordinary. Lieutenant Alina Ward has demonstrated capabilities that few of us have ever seen firsthand." His gaze swept across the room, making eye contact with several instructors before returning to Alina. "What most of you do not know is that Lieutenant Ward is not just a trainee. She is a Tier 1 SEAL sniper with over 300 confirmed saves during her service overseas." A collective gasp rippled through the room. Whispers erupted into audible reactions. Trainees exchanged wide-eyed glances, some mouths falling open. Ridge's jaw tightened as his eyes widened in disbelief. 300 confirmed saves, he muttered under his breath, unable to comprehend the revelation. She's a legend." The commander continued, his tone steady. "Her missions, many classified, involved high-risk extractions, hostage rescues, and strategic operations in hostile environments. She has neutralized threats under conditions most operators would never survive. Her skill is unmatched, her precision deadly, and her judgment flawless. Today, what you witnessed, the 1,000-yard shot, her calm under provocation, is the result of years of experience and training at the highest level." The room fell into stunned silence. Ridge's earlier arrogance seemed almost childish now. He had mocked her, provoked her, and tried to assert dominance, completely unaware of the magnitude of her history. His ego crumbled as he watched her stand there, calm and composed, as the weight of her true accomplishments settled into the minds of everyone present. One trainee, unable to contain their amazement, whispered loudly, She's a living legend." Another added, "No wonder she doesn't even flinch. She's seen things none of us could imagine." Instructors nodded subtly, their eyes reflecting quiet respect and acknowledgement of her extraordinary past. Ridge, however, was grappling with a mix of emotions: humiliation, awe, and an almost desperate desire to understand how he had been so thoroughly outclassed. He approached her quietly after the briefing, trying to find words that could bridge the gap between his previous arrogance and the reality in front of him. "Lieutenant Ward, I had no idea," he admitted, his voice low. "I thought I knew what skill was, but you've redefined it." Alina's gaze met his, calm and unwavering. "Skill isn't about showing off," she said quietly. "It's about discipline, patience, and doing what needs to be done regardless of who's watching. You learned that today, even if it was the hard way." Her words carried authority without condescension, humility without weakness. Ridge's eyes softened, and he nodded, realizing that he had not only underestimated her, but also learned an important lesson about respect and discipline. Across the room, the trainees absorbed the revelation like a shockwave. Alina's legend, previously whispered in awe and speculation, now had official confirmation. Her presence on the base was no longer just about training. It was a living lesson in precision, discipline, and leadership. Many approached her cautiously, offering congratulations or attempting to understand the methods behind her flawless skill. She responded politely, never boastfully, allowing her actions and calm presence to communicate more than words ever could. The commander addressed the room again, emphasizing the importance of learning from Alina's example. "Lieutenant Ward embodies the qualities every operator should strive for: discipline, patience, precision, and composure under pressure. Today, you have seen what decades of experience can achieve. Let this be a lesson. Arrogance will always falter when faced with true skill, and respect must be earned through dedication, not bravado." Ridge, listening to the commander, felt a mix of relief and renewed determination. His earlier attempts at dominance had failed, but now he understood the magnitude of what he was witnessing. Respect, he realized, was not given, it was recognized, often through the undeniable results of one's actions. Alina Ward had earned that respect many times over, and he would need to recalibrate his understanding of both skill and humility. The revelation also sparked curiosity about her past missions. A few senior instructors began discussing her overseas service in hushed tones, sharing declassified anecdotes that hinted at the dangerous scenarios she had navigated. Trainees listened in awe as stories emerged of convoys saved from ambushes, hostages rescued under sniper fire, and strategic operations carried out with surgical precision. The whispers of awe transformed into a chorus of admiration and inspiration. Ridge, standing at the edge of the group, observed Alina closely. He noted the quiet confidence in her posture, the calm efficiency in her movements, and the subtle authority she projected without speaking loudly or seeking attention. It was a style of leadership he had never encountered, one forged through experience, tested under the most extreme conditions, and proven countless times. By the end of the day, the atmosphere on the base had shifted. Alina Ward was no longer just a trainee. She was a symbol of excellence, a reminder of what true skill and discipline looked like. Trainees and instructors alike approached her for guidance, eager to learn from someone whose history was as extraordinary as her present performance. Even Ridge began to see her not as a rival to be mocked, but as a mentor to respect and understand. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the base, Alina prepared her equipment for the next day. The whispers of awe continued to ripple through the ranks, growing louder with every retelling of the 1,000-yard test and the revelation of her past. Ridge, standing at a distance, watched her with a newfound respect and humility. He realized that the woman he had mocked and challenged was not only a legend but also a teacher, whose example would forever alter the way he and the entire base viewed skill, discipline, and leadership. And in that quiet, unassuming presence, a storm of inspiration and admiration continued to form, one that would challenge Ridge, transform the base, and reveal the full extent of Alina Ward's extraordinary legacy. The sun rose over the base, casting a golden hue across the training fields. Ridge Dawson, usually the loudest and most confident presence on the range, moved with an uncharacteristic quiet. Yesterday's revelation about Alina Ward's history had shattered his ego, leaving him restless, reflective, and surprisingly determined. For the first time in his career, arrogance wasn't an asset, humility and observation were. Ridge stood at the edge of the firing range, rifle in hand, watching Alina prepare for her drills. The breeze carried the metallic scent of spent cartridges and gun oil, mingling with the morning's fresh air. He noticed the way she adjusted her stance, her breathing, and even her focus on subtle environmental cues. Everything was precise, everything deliberate. He realized that true skill wasn't about power or speed. It was about control, patience, and awareness. The events of the previous day had replayed in his mind over and over. He recalled his smug smirks, the laughter at her expense, the constant attempts to distract her. Each memory now felt like a lesson in his own arrogance. He had believed confidence equaled superiority, but Alina Ward had proven otherwise. Real skill came from preparation, discipline, and experience, qualities he had ignored in favor of bravado. He walked toward her cautiously, trying to find a way to bridge the gap between humiliation and respect. "Lieutenant Ward," he said quietly, careful not to startle her. She glanced up, her calm eyes meeting his. Ridge's voice wavered slightly, betraying his uncertainty. I wanted to apologize. I misjudged you yesterday and today. I thought I knew skill. I thought I knew discipline. I was wrong." Alina's gaze softened subtly, acknowledging the sincerity in his words. She didn't smile, but she nodded. "Acknowledging a mistake is the first step toward improvement," she said calmly. "What matters now is how you move forward. Humility isn't weakness, it's preparation for growth." Her words struck him with the weight of truth. Ridge had always equated humility with submission, but now he saw it as the foundation of true skill. The instructors watched from a distance, noticing the change in Ridge's demeanor. Some exchanged quiet smiles, recognizing a rare moment, a trainee confronting his flaws and seeking to learn. Ridge, for all his previous arrogance, was taking the first steps toward understanding what it meant to earn respect and mastery. The day's drills began. Ridge focused intently, taking careful aim at targets set at various distances. He recalled Alina's methods, the way she adjusted for wind, measured subtle shifts in light, and timed her breathing with each shot. For the first time, he consciously observed, rather than acted impulsively. Each shot he fired was deliberate, controlled, and calculated. Mistakes were minimal, and his awareness sharpened with every attempt. Alina watched silently, her presence calm and unassuming. She didn't offer advice unless asked, allowing Ridge to learn through observation and reflection. Occasionally, she made subtle corrections, a minor adjustment to grip or stance, but always quietly, never intrusive. Ridge realized that learning from a master wasn't about constant instruction. It was about understanding the principles behind every movement, every decision, and every shot. By mid-morning, Ridge began to see progress. His shots landed more consistently, his posture steadied, and his reactions to environmental factors improved dramatically. For the first time, he felt a connection between skill, focus, and respect for the craft itself. He no longer fired to impress or dominate. He fired to perform correctly, to execute with precision, and to understand the discipline Alina exemplified. During a break, Ridge approached Alina again. "I never realized it's more than just hitting the target," he admitted. "It's control, timing, patience, and understanding everything around you. I didn't see that before." Alina nodded. "Most people don't. Discipline comes from experience, observation, and the willingness to learn, not from ego or arrogance. Remember, skill without respect is fleeting." The day continued with increasingly difficult drills. Moving targets, long-range shots, and environmental challenges tested every trainee's abilities. Ridge performed with a newfound respect for the process, and for the first time, he felt aligned with the principles Alina embodied. He no longer sought to dominate others. Instead, he sought to improve himself. Every misstep became an opportunity to learn, every success a confirmation of his growing awareness. By afternoon, the instructors began to notice the transformation. Ridge's shots were cleaner, more deliberate, and more precise. His focus was unwavering, even under simulated pressure and distraction. He had shifted from impulsive arrogance to controlled determination. And all the while, Alina remained a quiet observer, a silent teacher whose presence guided him without dominating him. During a final drill, Ridge faced a 900-yard target with simulated wind interference. He took a deep breath, recalling Alina's methods. He adjusted for wind, timing his shot with his exhale, steadying his body with deliberate precision. He squeezed the trigger and hit dead center. A murmur of approval rose from the instructors. Ridge exhaled slowly, feeling a sense of accomplishment rooted not in ego, but in genuine skill. Alina approached him afterward, her eyes calm and steady. "You've made progress," she said. "Not just in your shooting, but in your approach. Remember, respect and discipline are the foundation of true skill. The moment you rely on arrogance or confidence alone, you will falter." Ridge nodded, absorbing the lesson fully. For the first time, he understood that mastery wasn't just about hitting a target, it was about mindset, patience, and humility. Word of Ridge's transformation began to spread quietly among the trainees. Many had witnessed his earlier arrogance, and seeing him now approach drills with focus and respect was inspiring. Alina's influence was subtle, yet profound. Through observation, example, and quiet guidance, she had facilitated a transformation that went beyond marksmanship. She was teaching discipline, resilience, and the value of humility under pressure. By the end of the day, Ridge approached the commander privately. "Sir," he said, "I understand now what it means to respect skill and how much I have to learn. Lieutenant Ward isn't just extraordinary, she's a teacher in every sense. I want to continue learning, not just for myself, but for everyone here." The commander nodded approvingly, recognizing the significance of Ridge's growth. As the sun set, casting long shadows across the base, Ridge reflected on the events of the past few days. He had started as arrogant, mocking, and dismissive, but he had ended with understanding, respect, and a commitment to personal growth. Alina Ward had not only demonstrated unparalleled skill, but had also catalyzed transformation in those around her. The base itself seemed different. Trainees moved with renewed focus, instructors observed with heightened awareness, and even Ridge Dawson carried himself with a humility and respect previously foreign to him. Alina remained her usual calm, unassuming self, but her impact was undeniable. She had proven that true mastery came from discipline, experience, and quiet confidence, and that arrogance was no match for skill grounded in respect and precision. Ridge walked past her one last time that evening, his gaze steady. "Thank you," he said simply, "for everything." Alina nodded slightly, her expression calm and unreadable. "Keep learning," she replied. "That's the only way forward." Ridge exhaled, finally understanding. The journey wasn't about proving himself to others, it was about proving himself to the craft. And as the night settled over the base, a quiet truth became clear. The legend of Alina Ward was not just in her skill, but in her ability to teach, inspire, and transform those around her. Ridge's redemption was only the beginning. The base would never be the same again because Alina Ward had arrived, and she was a force to be respected, learned from, and remembered. The following morning, the base was alive with a renewed sense of purpose. Trainees moved through drills with a focus that had previously been rare, each one inspired by the quiet legend who walked among them. Alina Ward, as always, appeared unaffected by the attention, yet her presence alone seemed to elevate every operation, every training exercise, and every trainee's performance. Ridge Dawson was among them, noticeably changed. Gone was the arrogance that had defined him, replaced by a determination to learn, improve, and lead by example. He followed Alina's movements carefully, observing her calm precision, her deliberate actions, and the subtle corrections she made to herself and to the environment around her. He now understood that true mastery wasn't about showing off. It was about embodying discipline, skill, and composure. The base commander convened a special meeting that morning, inviting all trainees, instructors, and senior staff. The room buzzed with excitement, everyone eager to hear what would be said. Alina stood quietly near the front, observing with her usual composed demeanor. Ridge stood nearby, nervous but respectful, having spent the previous days reflecting on the lessons he had learned. The commander began, his voice firm yet filled with admiration. "Over the past several days, you have witnessed extraordinary skill, discipline, and leadership from one of our own, Lieutenant Alina Ward. Her actions have not only demonstrated unmatched precision, but have also inspired growth and transformation in those around her. Today, we recognize not just her achievements, but the impact she has had on this base." Gasps and murmurs filled the room. Trainees who had doubted her or tried to provoke her now looked at her with awe. Ridge, standing silently, felt the weight of what had unfolded. The commander continued, "Lieutenant Ward's service overseas, though largely classified, is unparalleled. Her skill, judgment, and courage have saved countless lives. Today, she has shown that true leadership comes not from arrogance or bravado, but from quiet mastery, discipline, and the ability to inspire others through example." A few instructors nodded in agreement, their expressions reflecting the respect they had long held for her but could now openly acknowledge. Ridge swallowed hard, realizing just how much he had underestimated her and how much he had to learn. Alina, as always, remained calm, her eyes steady, her demeanor unshaken by the attention or the accolades. Her focus was on the present, on the mission, and on teaching others to strive for excellence. The commander addressed the room directly, making sure every trainee absorbed the lesson. "Lieutenant Ward has set the standard for all of us. From today forward, her methods, her discipline, and her precision will serve as a model for training and for operations. Learn from her example, respect the craft, and understand that true skill is earned, not assumed." Ridge, standing near the back, felt a surge of determination. For days, he had been humbled, challenged, and transformed. Alina's influence had not only exposed his flaws but had also guided him toward a better understanding of skill, respect, and leadership. He approached her quietly after the assembly, his voice steady but filled with gratitude. "Lieutenant Ward," he said, "thank you for showing me what true skill and leadership look like. I've learned more in the past few days than I ever imagined. I want to continue learning from you, not just for myself, but so I can lead others properly." Alina's eyes met his, calm yet piercing in their intensity. "The moment you stop learning," she said, "is the moment you fall behind. Keep your mind sharp, your discipline steady, and your focus clear. Respect is earned every day, through every action and every decision." Ridge nodded, understanding the gravity of her words. He realized that this was not about fame, recognition, or personal pride. It was about mastery, about embodying the principles that allowed operators like Alina Ward to survive, succeed, and inspire others. Over the following weeks, Alina's presence reshaped the base. Trainees improved at an unprecedented rate, instructors adapted their methods to align with her example, and Ridge continued his own journey of growth and redemption. No one who observed her could deny the power of her influence. She did not seek attention, yet attention followed her, and respect came naturally. One afternoon, during a long-range sniper exercise, Ridge found himself paired with Alina for a challenging double-team drill. The target was set at a staggering distance of 1,200 yards, with simulated environmental interference. Ridge could feel the tension in his chest, a mix of anticipation and nerves. He glanced at Alina, who adjusted her scope with calm efficiency, her breathing steady, her focus unwavering. "Remember," she said quietly, "patience, observation, and control. Let the environment guide your calculations. Don't rush. Focus on what you can control." Ridge nodded, taking a deep breath and adjusting his stance. He mirrored her methodical approach, calculating wind shifts, distance, and trajectory. Alina fired first, her shot hitting dead center. Ridge followed, aligning himself perfectly, and his bullet struck the target just slightly off-center. A small smile crept across his face, not from ego but from genuine accomplishment. He had internalized her lessons and applied them with precision. The instructors watching nodded in approval. Alina's influence had produced tangible results, transforming Ridge from a brash, arrogant trainee into a disciplined, focused operator capable of performing under pressure. The ripple effect of her mentorship was evident across the range, as trainees applied her methods, refined their skills, and approached challenges with a renewed sense of purpose. By evening, the base had adopted a new culture of respect, discipline, and focus. Alina's legend had been cemented not through boasts or accolades, but through quiet mastery and the lasting impact of her example. Ridge, once her rival and skeptic, now walked with humility and confidence, his mind sharpened and his ego tempered. He had learned that true greatness was not about dominance, but about the consistent application of skill, patience, and leadership. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the base, Alina prepared her equipment for the next day. Trainees and instructors moved past her with renewed respect, their movements more disciplined, their focus sharper. Ridge paused briefly to watch her, his admiration clear in his eyes. "You've changed this place," he said softly. Alina glanced at him, her expression calm and unreadable. "We change ourselves first," she replied. "The rest follows naturally." The base, once a typical training ground, had become something greater, a place of transformation, learning, and inspiration. Alina Ward's presence had reshaped the culture, elevated the skill of every trainee, and left an indelible mark on those who witnessed her mastery. Her legend was no longer whispered in awe. It was recognized, respected, and embraced. And as night fell over the base, with stars glinting like distant echoes of the challenges she had faced and overcome, it was clear to everyone. Alina Ward was more than a sniper, more than a mentor, and more than a legend. She was the embodiment of discipline, precision, and quiet mastery. The story of her skill, her leadership, and her influence would be remembered for years to come. Trainees would tell it, instructors would teach it, and Ridge Dawson, once arrogant, now humbled, would carry its lessons into every challenge he faced. The legend of Alina Ward was cemented, not through notoriety or spectacle, but through respect, inspiration, and the undeniable truth of her extraordinary abilities. And so the base moved forward, transformed forever by the quiet, unyielding presence of a woman whose skill and character had redefined what it meant to be a true operator, a true leader, and a true legend.